Living alone can be scary, especially when you come home to find your house has been broken into. That's what happened when I returned home from a business trip 2 months ago. As I made my way from my Uber to the front door is when I first noticed something was wrong. The door frame was a mess of splintered wood. The cracks seemed to travel all along the framework. My heavy door tapped playfully off the debris, unable to close, unable to remain open. The knob was hanging loosely from its socket in the door. Giving the door a gentle push, it swayed open. I remember the piercing sound the broken glass made as my shoes pressed onto it. Glass from a table lamp that used to sit right next to my door. Before I investigated any further, I took a step back outside and quickly phoned the police. Not long after, a squad car arrived and an officer approached me. He was a large man with a stern look on his face. The aftershave he was sporting by the gallon almost knocked the wind out of me. With a gruff voice, he asked me what the problem was, and in an almost comical fashion, I gestured to my battered door. He hawked back some saliva before telling me to wait where I was. He retrieved his flashlight and entered my house. I had gotten back from my trip late in the evening, so the sun had already set hours ago. After about 15 minutes, he called me back inside. I turned on the lights and we walked around my house together. The house itself was a small 2-bedroom set in the middle of a tightly packed neighborhood. The fact that this happened without alerting any of my neighbors bugged me. However, my neighbors are all reclusive people. The if it ain't your business, best stay out of it type. The living room made up the majority of the house. Attached to that was a small kitchen. Down the hall led to the bathroom and both bedrooms at the back of the house. Methodically, I scanned each room carefully, while the officer prattled off questions about having any enemies or possibly a pissed ex-girlfriend. I just shook my head. We continued along and I checked the kitchen as well as the bathroom. Nothing had been touched. Finally, we made it to the back 2 bedrooms, and I looked at both of them carefully. Nothing was amiss. I couldn't think of a single thing that had been taken, which wasn't hard as I had moved in not long ago and I didn't have very many things in the first place. Even though I felt unsafe and worried, the officer told me there was actually little he could do to help me. He said something about writing up a report and filing it in case this happened again, but I was too lost in thought about the cost of repairs to pay him any mind. As he shuffled to the door, he turned back briefly and advised me to get a home security system. He said that he had one installed and is very happy with it. I thanked him and he left. The next day, I had scheduled a door repairman to come out and fix my door and frame. And yes, those guys are a thing, apparently. Since they wouldn't arrive until later in the afternoon, I duct taped my door and made my way to the electronics store. After being verbally bitch-slapped by multiple employees, each trying to make their own commission for selling me something, I quickly grabbed the first home security package I could find and rushed out of the store. I still paid, of course, but quickly. I'm sure I'm not the only one who hates being hounded in stores. After arriving at home, I received a text saying the repairman was on his way. During this time, I got started on installing my new system. The package came with 4 cameras to start, but you could purchase an expansion system which came with an additional 4 more cameras. I, however, didn't need them. The cameras installed relatively quickly. I placed one just outside my front door, another inside my living room. I placed 1 more camera in the hallway and 1 in my bedroom for good measure. The kit came with a little dock which synced all the cameras together and allowed me to remotely access them from my computer or phone, which was a nice feature. The repairman showed up shortly after I finished installing the final camera, and made quick work of my door and frame. I even had him install a chain guard so I had some additional security. Even with all the repairs and the security camera, I still felt uneasy. The thought of someone forcing their way into my home crawled underneath my skin. I tried my best to rationalize it, saying that the burglars broke in, realized I didn't have anything worth taking, and simply moved on. That wishful thinking helped calm me down, at least a little. 3 weeks ago, I was awoken in the middle of the night to my phone beeping hysterically. It was my new system, which I had programmed to a special ringtone. My bloodshot eyes cracked open, and once I realized what was happening, I sat up rapidly, retrieving my phone in the process. I opened the app and stared at the tiny screen in disbelief. Something was standing on my front porch. In the dark, it was hard to see, but it looked like a man wearing a dark hoodie pulled over his head. Curiosity began to flicker in my mind as my heart rate slowed. I was curious as to what he was doing. The man was standing in front of my door, motionless, as if he were a delivery man waiting for me to answer it. I stared for 20 minutes, too scared to move from my bed. And in those entire 20 minutes, the man didn't move once. Not even a flinch. Then, he slowly turned around and walked just out of view of my camera. I stayed awake the rest of the night, wondering if he would attempt to break in through a window. I was kicking myself for not shelling out the extra cash for the additional cameras. However, there were no further incident the rest of the night. Another full week passed before I was once again awoken by my phone's ringtone. I sat up groggily looking at the clock. 3:12 a.m. it read. I grabbed my phone and swiped to the entrance camera. However, this time there was no one there. I scrutinized the small screen carefully, but I still couldn't see anyone. Then, I switched to my second camera. I almost dropped my phone. The man was somehow standing in the center of my living room. That was impossible. My door was still intact a few feet away from him. I peeked over my phone at my closed bedroom door, then back at the screen. When I looked back, he was gone. I wasn't sure if he was in a blind spot or not, but I quickly called the police and they sent a car right over. The officer arrived shortly after and I received a notification on my phone. Sure enough, he was standing outside my door. I got up, but right before I opened my bedroom door, I paused, wondering if that person was still in my house somewhere. After a moment, I opened my door and walked to the front door. I opened that one too, but then I felt my body freeze as if something were wrong. My entire front door had been somehow unlocked as I stared at the lightly swaying chain guard. The officer entered, a different one since last time. This was a younger police officer, probably mid-20s. He looked as if he was taking things way too seriously, all by the book. He wrote down my whole account, and when I went to show him the camera feed, the man wasn't there. He made some off comment about a nightmare and that I should lock my doors in case something happens, though I knew for a fact I had locked my doors. He, like the one before him, told me there was very little he could do apart from making a note of it. I thanked him for nothing and he left. A few days ago, I was watching the news, and the hot local story was the apprehension of a two-man burglar team. Apparently, they would monitor and wait for people to leave their homes on extended travels, and would force their way in. It was said they only stole jewelry since it was easier to sell and that they didn't have a serial number. Their words, not mine. That would explain why they left my home alone for the most part. I own no jewelry. But last night, I was jolted awake thinking my phone had been going off. It wasn't, but I sat up anyway. I probably needed some medication or something to help me sleep. While I laid there, I grabbed my phone to check social media. After a few minutes, I'm not sure what compelled me to check the security app, but I did. I could feel a cold sweat forming at the top of my brow. Standing on the other side of my bedroom door, in the hallway, was that same man. He was inches away from my door. At the risk of getting fined by the police, I refrained from calling them. I simply waited until the sun came up, keeping a close watch on my screen. My entire house was completely silent, but he was standing there clear as day. Fatigue must have gotten the better of me because I awoke a few hours later in a panic. I checked my phone, which was now on the floor, and saw that all of my security feeds were clear. I don't know what that thing is or why it's even targeting me. Perhaps it's just the camera's malfunctioning, or maybe my nerves are making me see things. I'm not sure. Every time I go to check the recording, it's blank. It's probably just a figment of my imagination. But regardless, I think I'm going to crash at my friend's house for a week or two, just to be safe.